well.
No, you can
Oh, I
change it.
can change it.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, you want to go the other way.
All the way to
the right. 1500.
Facility, is that at a time certain or is that?
Yes.
Okay, what time is that?
That time certain. You meet at 4:03 in the lobby. And then we'll do the hotel first. We'll have Joe Ron, who's the guy who runs communications, so we really want to on this time. He's coming specifically to that rooms. And then about 4, we're going to the Lincoln Relations Center.
I will just say that, and I will not be at the tour.
I will do that, I'm sorry.
I was under the understanding that it would be much earlier. I have to leave here at 4 and I have to pack luggage and get an Uber.
Okay, let's get
I mean, I understand the tricky thing was balancing all of this and also them coming in on the weekend.
Would it be possible to see if that could be rescheduled, or with the gentleman to sometime earlier?
I don't know, I mean, are we gonna?
It's up to the body. I mean, if we wanted to, what we could do is we could basically recess to an all-night meeting.
Well, we're going to have to at some point. I mean, if we just get started now, we can get through as much as possible. Mr. Ford can reschedule the tour. I'll finish this by Zoom. We haven't gone through, not even a new business we're not even through new business with previous notice. We're at the second motion for that. So.
Personally, I think that's a good idea. I was optimistic that we could finish this agenda by 1 p.m. All right, come on. I'm a comedian, Vader and Malvin.
We saw how yesterday went. Come on, Mr. Redpath. Come on. That was very optimistic.
Let's see how far we get, and if Mr. Ford can reschedule,
The people running the hotel for us, literally all of them.
Good thing to say about the hotel. I drink
Toss up.
Come on, that's fine. Let's go. That last drink.
Yeah, I'll we're up for Mr. Malzahn.
No, first.
All eight of them.
All right, so would you like me to vote for you while you're going?
Orders of the
It's just 2 minutes.
Well, you do have 2 hands. That works, right?
So orders of the day are we have a tiebreaker for the bylaws committee that we have to address before we can get to the policy manual amendments we left off yesterday. So, Ms. Harkness, would you like to walk us through how we're gonna?
Well, I'll say the 10 that were elected, it doesn't matter the vote counts because they're not ranked. But the alternates are ranked and there was a 4-way tie. So we need to select 2 of them in order of rank. So the 10 that were elected were Karen Ann Harlos, Chuck Moulton, Sylvia Arrowwood, Rob Latham, Andrew Colstein, Paul Darr, Kyle Davis, Data Logan, Amanda Griffiths, and Jeff Niels. The 4-way tie for the 2 alternate spots were Mike Lopez, Tom Roulette, Michael Seebeck, and Bryce Vaughn. So we need to, I have my 20-sided die, and we need to tie break.
Mr. Rickett?
I move that the tiebreaker be done by open vote when the secretary can get to it.
Is there a second?
A second.
I have a point of order. Well, no, I withdraw. We can appoint alternates at any time. We had to our 10 today.
I mean, I'm somewhat facetious in that, but I would say sometime during this week, we should do this by open vote.
It would have to be a 7-day ballot though per our bylaws, which is fine.
Is that going to hamper the bylaws committee?
No, we have the 10. We have the 10.
I would move that this be conducted within the next week by vote. Using approval.
Second. Any discussion on that? Any objection? We'll go to the vote.
All right.
Let's see if we can keep it.
We're elected chair, chair.
Look at that speed.
Yeah, the LNC needs to elect the temporary chair.
Like the bylaws, or at least temporary chair.
Temporary, the bylaws committee elects its permanent chair.
So I think that'll.
I'll move to elect Kyle Davis.
Is there a second?
Wait, you want to do?
As the chair. As the chair, we have a temporary chair.
So yeah.
To appoint nominations.
I'll move to appoint Kyle Davis as chair of the bylaws, temporary chair of the bylaws.
Does he want to do it?
Sure.
Does he know?
We'll find out.
It's temporary. They're gonna elect their own chair once their first meeting anyway.
Kyle Davis. Any other nominations for the chair?
On the 10 that were elected,
Correct.
did we get a notice of those in the email?
We just read them out.
You read them out?
I just read them.
Yeah.
And the votes will be recorded in the minutes.
If we could get them up on the screen, that would be really.
I would have to type them out. If I could read them out.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Sorry.
Karen Ann Harlos, Chuck Moulton, Sylvia Arrowwood, Rob Latham, Andrew Kolsky, Paul Dar, Kyle Davis, Dana Logan, Amanda Griffiths, Jeff Neal.
Thank you. I would not. So. Would. There's a second.
Any other nominations? Go once, going twice, every time, nominations closed. So we,
Well, we do a approval voting, so people raise hands, we count. And
all right, so we'll do approval. So we'll start with Kyle Davis. Everyone who would like to nominate Kyle, just raise your hand.
Great.
For instance. 2, 5, 6, 7. For Karen Ann Harlow, raise your hand. And for Sylvia Arrow, raise your hand. Chairman. Like Mr. Peters, do interim.
For the record.
It's too late.
This is what we can't pick up by one. This is what I was.
No, I don't think it would change.
So,
All right, so next on the agenda is the menu that we were on yesterday.
Mr. Chairman, I think we're
Yes.
out of time on that. I would 60 minutes consideration of motions 2 through 9.
So, any objection to 60 minutes? Hearing none. We'll move on to motion number 2.
Objection to 60 minutes.
Motion to the FSC.
All right, so thank you, Mr. Chair. Common sense motion number 2. So we have, as you can see on this, oh, it's on the screen, just kidding. I'll just read it really quickly. So I will add subsection 9 to section 104, committee scope and responsibilities. This is the creation of a new subcommittee, Financial Standards Committee, otherwise known as FSC. The FS shall be informed of and approve all new expenditures under consideration to determine necessity, practicality, and state in the chair's discretion. This shall include, but not be limited to, transactions, agreements, or contracts being considered by the chair, the XD, the LNC, the executive committee, and any subcommittees, excluding those which fall into the purview of the EPCC or section 1.06, legal matters, subsection 2, authorization and management of lawsuits. The FSC thorough review of all bank statements, financial records, processes, and expenditures of the party on at least a monthly basis, but no later than on a quarterly basis. Focus shall be specific to cash disbursements, examining payees, evaluation of amounts to ensure consistency with authorized expenditures and adherence to the LNC's financial policies. This review shall be documented by the FSC. The FSC shall be available to the chair and to staff to discuss any of the aforementioned under consideration before such proposals are brought forward before the XD, Executive Committee, or LNC.
Motions or a second?
Oh, I'm sorry. And I will just add really quickly. So if this was adopted, because it would create a new subcommittee, there would be additional new language above the subsection 1 committee appointments, which would be adding a financial standards committee. The size would be 3 LNC members, one of which will be the LNC chair. So there would be an election of 2 the treasurer, I'm sorry, the chair would be ex officio, of course, and the member selection would be LNC. The chair selection would be determined by the committee.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Would the speaker motion still go?
No, I think it's very clear why this is necessary. The reasoning for sake of time, I would entertain any questions and discussion with the chair.
Mr. Redpath, Mr. Thompson.
Mr. Thompson.
You may go first. I'll defer to you. Mr. Jones.
Malagon, yesterday you urged people to read all these, and I did. And I just want to point out, first of all, I just wanted to say that I am not opposed to a financial standards committee of some sort. All right, I think it's a good idea. Right, I think getting more people involved in the supervision of finances is not a bad idea. But I just want to point to the first sentence of the first paragraph. The FC shall be informed of and approve all new expenditures under consideration to determine their necessity, practicality, and feasibility in accordance with the LNC's current financial status, excluding the chair's discretionary fund. I mean, the way I interpret that is that if the executive director or someone on staff wants to buy $22 of office supplies on Amazon, they've got to get permission, the approval of the committee ahead of time. All new expenditures, that is, I think it's going to be extremely burdensome and could at times greatly slow down the work of our national office. I would also say that regarding the second paragraph, first sentence, the FS bank statements, financial records, processes, and expenditures of the party on at least a monthly basis, but no later than on a quarterly basis. Wait, what? I'm not sure. I think that's an internal contradiction. That's how it strikes me. On at least a monthly basis, but no later than a quarterly basis. There's something rubbing there. So I have a couple of objections. I think that there ought to be some minimum dollar amount before something is reviewed here. Number one, and there needs to be a review. I don't know about a monthly basis, maybe a bi-monthly basis. I could live with a monthly basis, but it seems to me that sentence is moved up a bit. And there needs to be some sort of review. But if new expenditures need to be approved ahead of time, there needs to be a minimum dollar amount of some sort, or it's just going to come up the works of the national office. And I would be most interested in hearing the executive director on this as well.
So I can speak to those with the chair.
It would be helpful. Without objections.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is where we're at. We are in dire need of a check and balances system. I don't think that staff is going to be. So the way that this is envisioned to work, a lot of this language is pulled from the EPCC. The EPCC has a Teams chat. It's a confidential chat where everything happens in real time. So it's just like APRC. When they approve something, they do stuff in real time, right? And it's social media stuff that requires immediate attention. So people that are on this committee need to understand that you are going to be on all the time, and you need to, so it doesn't gum up the works. But this is the reality of where we are financially. We need to make sure that all new expenditures are approved. We can't just do so willy-nilly anymore. I know that might be alarming to some people, but that's where we're at, and that's the reality that we need to come to terms with. As far as the monthly basis, but no later than a quarterly basis, we should be doing checks on all of this stuff on a monthly basis, but it should not exceed a quarterly basis. So that's what that. So we should be doing this at the very least once a quarter to see where we're at. But preferably, it would be, a monthly basis to do it, but it wouldn't be any later than a quarterly basis because we need to be keeping track of our finances, and that's what this committee is prized to do. So I know that may or may not assuage your concerns, but that was the thought process when this was crafted.
So I've got Thompson, Jenner, and Carlos Tranquil, and Martin.
With the chairs, they just direct this directly through.
Sure. Okay.
Because that's where it's kind of going anyway. So a concern that I have on it is that I agree with the checks and balances, right?
we definitely had issues there. I'm afraid that this check may be overreaching with it by having the committee have approval power. Because you could potentially have a committee that shuts down all purchasing, right? But I would argue that the issue we were having before wasn't so much the chair having authority to make a purchase, it was that we weren't informed about it. Would you be open to not having a committee do approval, but just having it so that they had to be, so that they did the review?
Well, that defeats the purpose. So, I mean, I don't have to.
We still require the disclosure.
Well, right, but it doesn't. So if this isn't again. So none of these motions are to disparage the current chair. I think we all know why these motions are put in place. So had someone else just said it doesn't really do us a lot of good if the chair just buys $2,000 worth of, and now I'm telling you that I just spent $2,000 on Instacart. And so now we're informed that money was spent, but the money is now gone, and it doesn't really prevent anything.
Right,
So,
but if you review it prior to execution.
well, right, and that's why it's approved. So it's like, do we need this expense? Is this something that's absolutely necessary? And that's the whole point of the whole thing. So I mean, we can be informed of it, but that doesn't mean that the money, like, do you see what I'm saying? Like, I understand what you're getting.
I do see what you're saying.
I think that's what I said. I think we should actually keep things discussional.
We're having lively conversation.
It was a
Oh,
productive conversation,
We
but I
haven't
can see this.
involved at all.
I know,
Not yet.
but I can see this going on for some time. So I think it's probably in the business of the body.
Point of first improvement,
Yeah.
I had said, I'd like to hear from the executive director on this, when she was out of the room. Now she's back in the room. And
Without objection from the board, if that's.
I just wanted to, my point was, I don't know if you were elsewhere in the room, and I just didn't see.
But that regarding this, the first sentence, first paragraph, the FSC shall be informed of and approve all new expenditures under consideration to determine their necessity, practicality, and feasibility in accordance with the LNC's current financial status, excluding the chair's discretionary fund. My question was, they're talking about approving the FSC approving all expenditures.
New expenditures, that's key.
New expenditures ahead of time. I'm concerned about, the example, $22 bought supplies bought on Amazon. You know, I mean, does this have potential? Thank you.
Just like administratively, I think if perhaps there was a dollar amount assigned, that. I apologize, I wasn't in here for the rest of the discussion, but those are just my. Okay.
You missed a great time.
I moved to.
Mr. Jeff.
So yeah, I will make some commentary as much in line with what we've talked about. Is this proposal is being pitched as a check and balance, but by the plain language listed here, this is not a check and a balance. This is create a committee that will be placed superior to the LNC. It will empower a small number of individuals here to have absolute control over any expenditure of the party, as just described, and as would be reasonably considered as a nightmare to execute without gumming up all of our works. We talked with our presentation from Debbie earlier about aligning behind a board vision and building a trustful relationship. This is not a vision for the board that instills trust in operations. The way it's being sold is common sense, and I believe it was specifically stated that this had been endorsed by the staff, which does not appear to be the case. Is a dishonest presentation of what's going on here. Measures in this proposal don't serve as a check and balance. It empowers a small number of people to basically run this party by decreeing outside of the visibility of the whole board. None of us here are elected to run this party on a small committee of 2 to 3 people or 3 to 5 people. And if this passes this new committee. And I object to the consideration that we would delegate that level of power to something where this entire board was elected to oversee expenses and account for those things and to have say on those actions. To say that a committee of 3 individuals could override any decision of this board if they believe it's not necessary, practical, or feasible in accordance with the current financial status. So if those matters are there, that should be something that is brought before the LNC and put before the representatives that were elected to make those decisions by our body instead of trying to force this into a small number of people's hands with make
outside of the common. Our next, I got Carlos, followed by Trendland, Martin, Boss, Malagon, and Scavenge.
Wait, Mr. Chair, there's a disingenuous nature here. I'm gonna read the last sentence.
I wanna make sure we get everybody to speak and then we can come back around, because I don't want to go back.
These are the plain text wordings right on this resolution. President, these are this proposal.
Mr. Chair, there was just a lot of. Ms. Harlan.
Thank you, and I'm gonna put my screen back on. I was actually looking to see if I could change my flight to accommodate the convention oversight committee schedule, and I can't, there is no flights. I did read this ahead of time, but sometimes hearing other points of view do assist. I share the same concern of approve. We're reducing a great deal of the authority of the LNC down to 3 people. And even though there's a good chance, let's be realistic with the makeup of the board, I probably would agree with those 3 people. But that's not what we were elected to do. I love the review. I love their analysis, but I think they need to then report to the LNC. And the LNC can make a disapproval. I don't have an amendment to make. This is another thing that I think that needs to go for. And I really don't appreciate the faces that are being made at my debate points. I've tried to be respectful to everybody. I think this needs to be recommitted to deal with this approval process, because the rest of it I think is fantastic.
Trendland?
Never, it was already answered.
Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would agree with the things that have already been said by Mr. Redpath, Mr. Chatterton, Ms. Harlos. Thank you guys for your comments. Also, thank you, Adrian, for working on this.
Mr. Malagon.
Mr. Malagon, pardon.
We're not friends.
Cool, good to know. I wasn't sure. This is definitely good work, and I appreciate it. I share the concern that this would create a problem where a very small group of people would have just too much of the word approve, at least. But it seems like there's other issues, so maybe I could go ahead and move to kick this to committee, as Ms. Harlow suggested.
It wasn't a committee.
Yeah, this was just brought up by a member, so it wouldn't be in order to go to no committee unless you have a committee.
We could kick it to, do you have a suggestion, Ms. Secretary?
No, I think.
Is there an appetite for division of this particular one?
Can I just say that the last sentence says the FSC shall be available to the chair and to staff to discuss any of the aforementioned under consideration before such proposals are brought forward before the
I'm going to
XD
reclaim my
Executive
time
Committee
and
or the
just,
LNC.
Mr. Chair,
So-
Mr. Chairman.
Let's keep it one person, the person who's speaking, and we'll go around.
So,
Thank you, Mr.
Chair,
Chairman.
So hold on. So you're asking a question. There's no, that's not an option right now. So
Thank you. Okay, I appreciate that. It seems like we've got to be careful not to become a bureaucratic, quagmire where to do simple things, it requires a bunch of people to be present and available who are not paid, who may or may not be reliable to those tasks in the future. And really it just usurps the board. So I would move at a minimum that we strike the word approve. If I could move to amend it, maybe that would help the situation a little bit. Because I'd love to see this review happen. I think we should know about what's going on, and it would be smart to have the chair submit those kinds of things before it happens, ideally. But the main thing is we just want to know, and that we have the power to approve or disapprove once we know about it.
So hold on, before you get there, because I think you're debating on a motion there.
Oh, I apologize. You're correct. I'm out of order. Yeah, I would make the motion to strike the word approve.
Is there a second? All right, you can speak to your motion. Go to you. Is there any discussion on this motion? Mr. Chatterton, Mr. Thompson.
I would support the amendment. I think we would need to make some additional minor adjustments. I believe it was Mr. Redpath or Ms. Carlos's commentary about reviewing and providing feedback to the LNC to consider whether a thing should be, disallowed. I'm not, would that maybe be remedied with, shall be informed of, review, and give feedback to the LNC? All new expenditures under consideration to determine their necessity is written from there. I don't want to rush to the second level amendment, but I think we need something additional of those. Since we can't do an additional amendment, I think that wrong. But I would see that as a good way to account for these things.
So right now, unless you're, what's germane right now is the amendment, because we're voting, we're technically in discussion on the amendment. So I would
Yes.
pass all, I hear you.
So I was suggesting
Okay.
an amendment to the amendment, but I don't know the specific words, so I'm not making that motion right now. But I was asking if anyone has suggestions on that.
I'm amenable for it. I'm open to that.
So it would be specifically for Mr. Thompson, then Mr. Malago, then Mr. Dar.
So if we are,
Mr. Ford, then Mr.
so if there is appetite to strike approve, I would like to suggest specifically. The FSC shall be informed of and prior to execution, review all expenditures.
So you're amending the amendment?
No, well, if the amendment should fail, because I don't want to get stuck in 12 months. But I'd switch to, I'm speaking against the amendment by saying I have it.
Can you read that language again?
The FSC shall be informed of and review prior to execution all the expenditures.
Mr. Malago?
I'm not opposed to that. I want to just remind everyone, this is not the disingenuous nature of the debate that's happened thus far. It's either because people don't understand, haven't read it, or don't understand what they've read. And again, at the last sentence says the FSC shall be available to the chair and to staff to discuss any of the aforementioned under consideration before such proposals are brought forward before the XD Executive Committee or LNC. So all of the power that, the chair has their discretionary fund, the executive committee has the ability to approve whatever, the LNC has the ability to approve whatever per the policy manual. None of that has changed. It's just that now we have a committee that knows our finances inside and out, that has the treasurer on that committee and has run everything with a fine tooth comb. And so if they've given the green light, then it should be kind of, at that point, it becomes a matter of whether the executive committee wants to allocate those funds because we have them for this specific thing. And it's been deemed to be they can still approve or reject whatever based off that recommendation. I don't think that I'm particularly against Mr. Thompson's motion. I think that's fine. Can you read that one more time? Just for the
FSC shall be informed of and review prior to execution all the expenditures.
Yeah, if everyone is concerned with the approved, what I don't want to happen is it doesn't do us any good to just be informed that $5,000 were spent or $2,000 were spent after the fact because the money is gone. There's no checks and balances. It's just informing us that we've already maxed out the credit card. Great, good to know. That doesn't really help the situation. So if that language makes people more comfortable, I'm not opposed to that. If approved makes people antsy and that's better, I guess that's fine. The whole purpose is to have a committee that understands our finances inside and out and can say, this is feasible. This is something that we should be doing. We can spend this much on X, Y, or Z.
Next is, I've got Ford, Dar, Johnson right now, Carlos, Sheridan, Markey, and Kelly. So Mr. Ford.
So I wonder if it's just starting. I'd like to take a real world example that happened just a few hours ago. I was joining the executive in that open session, to discuss providing funds for Arkansas for ballot access. Now, where would this FSB fit in that whole equation? Is that before it gets to us? Is it after it? Explain that.
It has
It would be
nothing to do. That's an executive committee function.
Sorry.
No, who executes the expenditure would have to send it before the committee, right?
Well,
After we vote on it.
So may I address address that?
Yeah.
So for instance, in the real world example that happened this morning, Mr. Redpath would have come to he would be on the FSC regardless and say, I want to encumber $14,000 for ballot access. At that point, the FSC would meet and say, okay, well, do we have the money in the ballot access fund? Are they earmarked? Where is this money going to come from? Do we have it from the general fund? Is it earmarked? And then once that motion is brought before the executive committee, he can say, I ran it by the FSC. They gave the green light. We do actually have exactly $14,000 in the ballot access fund. So I would like to encumber those funds for Arkansas. And maybe someone else wants to encumber them for Colorado or for Mississippi or whatever, right? But now it becomes a discussion of what are we going to do? We have the funds. Where are we going to allocate those? We have them and we can actually spend. We spent trying to figure out, then the vice chair made an amendment. Well, actually, we don't have the money, so we're going to raise the money to do it. This committee helps prevent any of that need for discussion or trying to figure out, do we have the money? What's going on? The FSC now knows that we have this money or don't have this money to execute this function. And if they don't approve it or there is no green light or whatever expenditure, then the XCOM has a right to know, or the LNC has a right to know, or whatever. We don't have this money; it doesn't exist.
Right there.
Okay, sir. So I'm going to paraphrase Tom Hanks.
Big.
I don't get it. It's not, and again, all great ideas we discussed. But if in fact, the people who sit on the XCOM are ultimately going to be the ones who channel information back to the FSB, aren't we introducing just another, so we have an XCOM that's fully enabled with all the people necessary to make that decision. So it's almost like we're screening for stuff that ultimately is going to be any questions that are going to be answered by the people on the committee who are doing. So I think we just
So I'd like to speak to the characterization there that the LNC actually looking at and approving some of these items. As I've been now vice chair and been able to look at different expenditures and contracts that have occurred this past year, but I had no clue happened as a member of the LNC until after having the visibility to see that. My concern at that point was us as the LNC have not been doing our job properly. And the concern to be expressed there was that we need to have some sort of review process, whether this particular policy will address that or not. That is the concern that I want to see addressed. We have some sort of review process that allows us to have the visibility we need to, and to make that decision, and to know what is going on with it in the LNC there. And I'm going to call the question. I didn't call all questions, I just called the question on the amendment.
Okay, all question is not debatable, so that's majority.
No, 2/3.
2/3. Sorry.
So where are we? What are we?
So we're on the amendment, which would be to strike approve.
To strike, approve, and remove, and replace it with nothing.
With nothing.
So that's where we're at.
So if you want
So-
Mr. Thompson, I'm sorry, request for information.
Yes.
So if we prefer Mr. Thompson's verbiage rather than just striking the word approval, we would vote down this amendment so that his amendment could
Then be considered.
Well, before we do that, we have to actually vote on whether or not to, end discussion to vote on.
Yes, this
Okay, thank you.
vote is to in discussion.
Correct. And vote. So all in favor of any discussion to be able to vote on the amendment, raise your hand. All opposed? All right, the ayes have it. We'll now move on to a vote for the amendment to strike approve. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? We'll do it one more time. So all in favor of the amendment, the Martin amendment, which would be to strike and approve, raise your hand. All opposed?
Wait, did you?
I'm sorry,
Motion
motion passes, sorry.
Did you vote that I was going to adopt yours?
That's why I asked
I
the
know,
question.
right?
I got
Wait,
it.
wait, there was
I just
confusion.
set that up
There was
to go.
confusion here. So sorry, Mr. Chair, there was confusion. people didn't know what they were voting on. So,
No, you're mistaken.
so I don't think Mr. Thompson.
I apologize.
Without objection from the body, we can revote. Let's make sure everything is kosher.
No,
Everybody's-
what,
So-
we have an option, where are we? I'm
Okay.
kind of lost as to our various
All right,
options.
let's go back 2 steps, if everybody's cool with
And
that.
I'll object to another, calling another question. I think we've called it twice already.
No, the
No.
question's been called. I don't think that's what people were.
Okay, hold on, let's,
Call the question.
everybody breathe real quick.
We can divide the body and make it.
Okay, so we called the question. I think there was some confusion on the prior vote, so I'm gonna call us back to that prior vote. So right now, we are on a vote for the Martin amendment, and his amendment to the main motion was to strike and approve. So if you vote yes.
And replace it with nothing,
And
correct?
replace with nothing.
So
if
just
you
so we're
vote
all clear.
yes on this amendment, you would be striking and approve. If you vote no, you would keep the original language. Once this amendment is dispensed with, then we'll move on to the main motion, which will also be amended at that time. So everybody knows where we're
Yeah,
at.
Mr. Thompson
And Mr.
had
Thompson
had
has
a
an
proposed
amendment.
amendment
Right.
that it seems favorable to everyone. So if we shoot this down, he will make his
He's making
amendment.
debate, Mr. Chair.
No, I'm,
let's not- let's-
Consider the question.
Yeah. We already voted on it and now this guy's debating.
All right, yeah, hey. I'm gonna call it in order because there was some confusion. If we do it as a body, we'll end up in the same place regardless. And to vote a certain way, you're gonna vote there again. So let's do it quickly.
If we want to open up discussion again,
Martin,
Mr.
Martin, you're not. Okay, so, Mr. Redmond.
Okay, so, I'm sorry, so we strike this, but then if this passes, are we then going to consider the language of Mr. Thompson or not?
As soon as he's recognized,
We
he can
could-
make that motion. Anybody can make an amendment. Right,
Thank you.
okay. So let's just,
passes or if it fails?
doesn't
You can
matter.
still amend
It
it.
doesn't matter because once we're on the main motion, you can
Either way.
amend it you want by yourself. So regardless of what happens next, it can be amended or voted on as is. So all in favor of the Martin amendment to strike and approve, raise your hand. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6. All opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so motion failed. Amendment fails, rather. Mr. Thompson, go ahead.
I move to strike and approve, I move to strike and approve, replace with review prior to execution. Second.
All right, motion is moved and seconded. If you'd like to speak to your motion, or your amendment, rather.
I'm gonna need it again in 1 second, if you just give me 1 moment, please. Go back to the original. And what was your suggestion, please?
Mr. Thompson?
I'm going to bring this over to you, so you can just keep it my screen. Review prior to execution.
So it would still be striking this again.
Correct. It would strike and approve. Replace with.
Let me just go back.
What can you do?
And then you're adding
He's trying to get the.
and approve prior to execution.
Approve.
No. And review prior to execution. Okay, thank you. I'm just gonna highlight that to keep it clear. Okay, thank you.
So with objection from the body, I'd like to recognize our executive director.
Hi, guys. Just wanted to clarify after I've been listening to some of the discussion and my comments, the nightmare portion of this is actually the review prior to execution portion without a dollar amount. So the problem being that if I need to spend $22 on physical supplies on Amazon, or if a staff, yes.
so what would you recommend? We were discussing that right now. What's the dollar amount that you would recommend?
Right, so I would say, honestly, probably, I mean, if I'm ever spending anything that's over $1,000 for sure, I'm checking with Steve or talking to Paul or something like we're getting approval, but even that's really high. I would say maybe 600 would still be reasonable.
Okay, so
And also I need a time frame though, because consider the fact that it might be 600 at one time, or it could be 600 spread out over a year. It's like, these things matter. It's just what I don't want to slow down is, for instance, last year we had a security problem with the website. We needed to use a new security provider. And we needed to make that decision quickly. It was going to cost us $400 over the year in order to implement this security procedure on our website, the plugin that we needed. So I gave the authorization to do it that day because it was so important. If we add these layers of complexity, that could create issues. So I would say, if you guys don't like 1,600, I think it's still reasonable.
Okay. I mean, if you're willing to do that.
Mr. Johnson, I think you already recognized me, right? And then Mr. Chatterton.
My amendment has not been seconded.
Yeah,
No,
so-
it was. It was.
Now,
It's still, I believe you misheard.
Oh, you know, I'm so sorry.
I'm not even
I'm
sure.
part of the hearing. I've already with this, okay, so the FSC shall be informed of and review prior to execution, all new expenditures totaling over $600 per year. Would that be acceptable to you? That's what I thought I heard.
May I offer a friendly suggestion for the language?
I'm allergic to Mr. Mallion.
May I offer a friendly
Handsome
suggestion?
brown man.
Hold on a second. Mr. Chatterton, Ms. Harlow's, and then Mr. What's this?
You can take me off the list, I was gonna do that.
Gotcha.
I think that the responses to a lot of these concerns being raised are gaslighting what is being brought.
Let's,
from the objection.
everybody's got to stop mischaracterizing.
It
That's,
is-
that's his
it
right to
is
say
not-
that.
It is not improper to point out the fact that the concerns being raised about this, empowering a small number of people to have over authority over the LLC. And the fact that
Orders of the
none of
day.
us were, I appreciate being allowed, Mr. Chair, I would ask you to call Mr. Malikan to order. He is making it about anybody not recognized.
Second.
There's been multiple people making interruptions. I call all those members to order.
And yet there's just one that does it over and over and over. The issues that have been raised about this proposal, about turning the small committee over the entirety of the LNC, who has been elected to make the decisions about financial expenditure of the party. And to say that even elements that have to be reviewed prior to execution, all of the steps that would be involved in approving that. I appreciate that we've added a dollar threshold in consideration of that. But again, still, to have this body that would be empowered above the LNC for any expenditure that would be able to push to stop the expenditure.
Can you call Mr. Malikan to order, Mr. Chair?
And
I don't, what is he doing?
He's being disruptive.
Mr. Thompson, your point.
Is this germane to the amendment? It sounds like you're speaking against the main motion.
Yes.
I'm speaking to the fact that this amendment does not address the concerns that have been raised. So I'm speaking against that consideration to resolve the issues with the main motion. And the facts that, as these are being raised, we're being mocked by others on this board is specifically a matter that is undermining the ability to build trust on this board and to work towards a common vision. And when that vision that is trying to be pushed through involves to essentially empower a super minority of this board to make overarching decisions over top of what we were all elected to participate in and evaluate. This is not something that requires confidence. This is not something that is going to drive more engagement, more fundraising. None of these things are being served by the attempt to push this policy through and to misrepresent what it stands for. As people are raising concerns that are straight out of this wording that says that this committee will have greater authority than the LNC.
The amendment, I do think it layer of complexity. I just realized that this review of, and it's actually over $100 per expenditure, is already in the policy manual that the treasurer has to personally approve expenditures over $100. And officers, the technical word of officer being the chair, the secretary, treasurer, and vice chair, already have additional responsibilities. I urge voting down this amendment, and if it's voted down, and whether it's voted down or up, I am going to be willing to divide the question. The part of this motion that I support is the second paragraph. That is a committee that does a review and reports to the LNC, and the LNC can then take appropriate action. It doesn't empower a three-person committee.
Point of information, Mr. Chair. Can the secretary please, as a point of information, can you put that on this, what you're referring to in the policy manual?
Oh, I'll try to find it. Let me find it in the meantime, because I could be mistaken, Mr. Malikan, but I'm pretty sure. Let me find that.
While you do, Mr. Ford.
Yeah, for the purposes of this amendment, I wonder if folks could generation, what is the definition of the word, what does the word is means? You review the definition of review. It strikes me further that the word review is nothing more than a substitute for approval. And so, yes, when my conversation the last day or two has always been to define specifically these phrases, because there's really so much room for interpretation. You may be completely honest in your eyes of the survey, but is in fact the word review tacit authorization for future boards? So what does review mean? We need to define within this motion the term review. Does review mean simply letting the body know, for example, Mr. Dar's frustration, letting him know that this exists? Or does review mean
Did you answer Mr. Malagon's question? I had the dollar amount wrong, it was $200, but all expenditures shall be evidenced by receipts. The chair treasurer shall be required to approve and evidence by signing or email all expenses and expense account reimbursements in excess of $200 made to the executive director or LNC members. So it is limited.
And it's, well, it's reimbursement. That
Yeah.
was the whole, so that was, because I vaguely remember that, but I remember that we discussed that. It was just key to reimbursement,
Yeah.
not to new expenditures.
Apologies for my
So
over-interpretation.
I thought I missed something. That's what I was confused.
Thank
But
you.
thank you.
just him established?
Well, I'm just wondering when the last time was that this board approved a new expenditure. I mean, I'm hearing that this is gonna usurp the board, but when did we approve an expenditure?
We don't have,
Except,
Oh, that
you
was
know,
a good
maybe
one,
you
though.
guys. and
Maybe this would have stopped that.
We approved Debbie Mason. I'm sorry, I shouldn't.
Yes, Debbie Mason. But, apart from that, I mean, I don't think that this is going to replace the board's ability to vote on something. This is an intermediary step, and lots of boards have financial committees, finance committees. This is not a new thing.
Next is Martin Dar, and then I believe Redpath Coward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My main concern right now is that our report told us to listen to our staff and to take into account how this will affect their jobs. And we heard that basically this idea is a huge pain in the ass. It's not that we don't need a financial review committee. We need it, but it's the previous approval prior obligation that slows things down and makes us unable to respond. We need to trust the people that we hire and empower to do the jobs. And if we put handcuffs on them so they can't make expenditures unless they're asking for permission, I mean, look, yeah, set a threshold if necessary for prior approval. How much are you not comfortable with them spending before they need to come and get permission from somebody? And that's what we're talking about. I know, guys, I'm capable of making my own comments without your help. Thank you. I know you don't think that. Seriously. Mr. Chairman, I'm trying to give my remarks here, but Mr. Malagon is not being very respectful of this body. Thank you. I feel like if there's any prior obligation, this is going to just be really, really slow. It's unnecessary bureaucracy. It's exactly the kind of waste that we don't want. What I think we should do is put a time limit on it for how long it takes to disclose something. So like if within 1 week or within 3 days of the expenditure, we're notified, that really helps. And then if we have a dollar limit on how much they can do, which we're proposing right now, that kind of covers all the bases. You know, if we're really worried about someone, I don't think we need to worry that much about our staff, you know, going wild. That's not really the problem. The problem is we just need to know what's going on. This board needs to be informed. I like the idea and the concept here. I can see what they're trying to do, but I think they just mistakenly have put in too much restrictive power on this. And it makes it more of a threat, both to staff and to people on the board who want to know more, don't want their motions screened before they get to them, right? They want to be able to propose things and be taken seriously. I would honestly, if the member is amenable to it, it would be wonderful if we could look at, instead of prior to execution, do the review within a week. Give that committee time to actually do it, get a qualitative analysis on the spending, and then put a cap. Anything over this much requires. We already have that in our policy manual, and so it seems like this would kind of be a mistake to pass it as is. It probably just needs to work off of the existing policy manual, and that seems like a pain for our treasurer. If everything over $200, they're having to get prior permission for, right? That would be a lot of work burden that we'd be putting on him or whoever's on this committee. And for volunteers, it just doesn't make sense. That would be kind of my thing. If we had paid employees that were round the clock working on this, why not? We could budget everything and have everything already pre-approved, and then they could. But this isn't even doing that. This is, even if we allot some execution, this would have to be notified. And then we've also heard a version of interpretation that would say before it comes to the board, it has to be screened. So both of those ideas I'm not comfortable with. And I think it would be better if we just focus on disclosure.
Next is Mr. Dorsey.
I don't think we're gonna workshop this from the table right now, very well, so I'm just gonna call all questions.
The motion to call up previous questions or second?
Second.
And Mr. Chair, it is in order to move to divide even when the previous question has been called. So we can vote on all previous questions, but I do intend on moving on dividing. I can give you the Robert citation on that.
No, that's fine. Yeah.
So right now, we are on an amendment, and then we'll get to the motion. There can be.
Well, he moved all previous questions.
All previous questions.
If that passes, I am going to move to divide.
Okay. All right, there's a motion to move all previous questions. There was a second. All in favor of calling all previous questions, raise your hand. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, all opposed, raise your hand. All right, motion to move all previous questions passes. We're now on the amendments.
I'm moving to divide. It's in order when all, it is in order.
The amendment motion? We have to wait for the main motion.
And,
If we call all these questions, we have to vote on these questions.
no,
But
there
order.
is an exception in Roberts, but I will do it after,
Okay.
after the vote on the motion to
Well,
amend.
Point,
Yes.
point of parliamentary inquiry. So if the secretary is going to move to divide the question, can we have them all be roll call votes? Or rather, should they all be roll call votes?
It should be.
Yes.
Yeah.
As I understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
For policy amendment. So we'll do the amendment and the actual main motion with the roll call. So right now, we're on the Thompson amendment. And after we dispense with this, we can move on to the main motion, whether or not we decide the question. So all in favor of the Thompson amendment, which is on the screen in yellow
And red.
and red, please raise your hand. All opposed, raise your hand. Amendment passes. We're now on the main motion.
And,
Ms. Harlow, would you like to take it?
yep, I'd like to move to divide,
Right, there's a motion to divide.
and I'll say where I wish it divided. I would like, paragraph number 1 and 3 to be together, and 2 to be separate. So it'd be the first and third paragraph to be together, and the second paragraph separately. I'd like to speak to that if there's a second.
Second, well, I like that little paragraph. and change it back.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
After she speaks to her dividing the questions, this is not debatable, correct? Because we've already called all questions. So we're good to go. After she speaks to her motion, we're good, right? Correct.
Right, after I speak to it, we go to a vote.
Right, okay, that's what I think. Okay.
So, let's speak to.
Yes, I would. After hearing debate, I am not in favor of the first or the third one. I think we need an FSC. I think the FAC needs to thoroughly review everything, no matter dollar amount. And I think they need to report their review to the LNC. And then the LNC can decide whether they're going to do something with it or not. I want a review committee.
I do not want an approval committee or a dollar amount committee. It should be executive director, the chair, and everyone makes their decisions, deliver a report, and if they've been bad, then we can spend them. Not at this point because of our previous questions.
So, what is your nature of your?
I'm not wishing to engage in debate, I wish to get a point of view.
Okay.
So should we divide it in this manner? And we wind up with the middle paragraph or not, 1 and 3. The first paragraph defines the committee, right? Like the second part of it defines the committee. So what would happen in that case? Right, because the first, right, because the first one says, shall include, not be limited to, I'm sorry, it says who's on the committee, right? So would it be under the LNC then to appoint as we see it?
Well, it would be, so the bottom portion that says committee name, size, selection, all that would still be the same. And then the yellow paragraph would be, what would be considered as to be the description.
Right. I considered that description of how many members and who it includes to attach to any of those paragraphs.
As just a point of order, can the secretary again just make clear the division of the question? What the first thing that we're voting on, just so that there is no confusion.
Okay, yeah.
So
So this passed. So let me take all that passed.
And that's, yeah, that was confusing, just to make sure that we're all set.
So, the yellow paragraph is divided out, and
So you are moving right now, just to be clear, that yellow paragraph to adopt or reject that second paragraph. Is that correct?
Well, we're defining question. So here's what would happen. So let's say, for instance, the yellow paragraph got adopted. We vote on that first, or second, or whatever. Doesn't matter. But then if the other question is also adopted, that would get put basically as a whole motion.
Everything in green.
Correct. So we're gonna vote on the green and yellow separately,
Okay.
but they could either be voted down or adopted. There doesn't need to be.
And Mr. Thompson's question was, what happens if one is adopted and not the other?
So that would be the description.
right, and I want to make it clear that this part here that I'm highlighting, I think this attaches to all of the paragraphs. So that,
So
That-
any portion passes.
yeah,
that would
that's the
include whatever-
composition of the
Yeah,
committee.
that bottom portion, no matter what passes, unless both motions fail.
Then nothing's.
Then that would be adopted, but if either one of those gets passed, then that'll.
Okay.
Okay, so we're still in motion to divide. Those two questions, there's no debate. All in favor of dividing the question, please raise your hand. All opposed, raise your hand. The ayes have it, motion is divided. We will now vote first on we'll vote on the first and third paragraphs first.
The green?
Yeah, the green. And since it has already been called, we'll go ahead and move on to the roll call votes.
Okay, so one moment. I'm going to call that motion number 2 and sorry about that. So let me just put up on the screen again, because I know people have been confused, so we're voting on the green, on
Correct.
whether to adopt it.
Correct.
As a point of order, Mr. Chair, where are we time-wise? I have to imagine we're at the 6 minutes.
No, we're eight and a half minutes.
8 minutes.
Okay, Mr. Boss,
Can we have it on the screen?
I can't vote and have it on the screen at the same
Okay,
time.
all right, okay.
But let me put it on the screen again so that everyone can see. On the green,
Could I make a request?
Could it be possible for us to vote on the yellow first, since I suspect there's more consensus around the yellow paragraph than the green? Less contentious? Up to the body.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, let's just do it how we're doing it, because we're gonna have to do it.
So we're doing green?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're voting on the green. Does anyone need to look at it further?
One reading, please. You want to read it? Yeah.
You want me to read it out loud?
Please.
Well, I have it right here. So the FEC shall be informed of and review prior to execution all new expenditures under consideration totaling over $600 per year to determine their necessity, practicality, and feasibility in accordance with the LNC's current financial status, open paren, excluding the chair's discretionary fund, closed paren. This shall include, but not be limited to, transactions, agreements, or contracts being considered by the chair, the XD, the LNC, the executive committee, and any subcommittees, excluding those which fall under the purview of the EPCC or section 1.06, legal matters, subsection 2, authorization and management of lawsuits, and attached with that, the FEC shall be available to the chair and to staff to discuss any of the aforementioned under consideration before proposals are brought forward for the XD, executive committee, or LNC.
Okay, everybody clear? Clear enough? Okay.
Mr. Boss?
Yes.
Mr. Chatterton?
No.
Mr. Dar?
Yes.
Mr. Dempsey?
Oh, he's not here.
Okay. Mr. Ford?
No.
I am going to vote no. Ms. Halsey?
Yes.
Mr. Birch?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Pass.
Mr. Malagon?
Aye.
Mr. McGee?
Aye.
Mr. Redpath?
I'll vote yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Ms. Januskevich?
Yes.
Mr. Boss?
Staying.
Mr. Dar? I mean, no, never mind. Dar voted. We don't have Dassing. Mr. Martin?
Same.
Abstain?
Yes.
Okay, so it is 8-3-2, Mr. Chair.
Motion passes. Then we'll now move on to the next item, which is the yellow block of text. Would you like us to read it?
The FEC shall do a thorough review of all bank statements, financial records, processes, and expenditures of the party on at least a monthly basis, but no later. It shall be specific to cash disbursements, examining payees, and the evaluation of amounts to ensure consistency with authorized expenditures and adherence to the LNC's financial policies. This review shall be documented by the FSC.
Is there objection to that? Objection by anybody here?
No.
We have to do a roll call vote. By the
Not
way.
to
No, we don't.
exemption.
No.
Not to exemption.
I mean, if there's no objection, then I would like to, yeah.
I think we have.
Yeah, I think it's pretty
Does
straightforward.
anyone object to moving on?
I think we can just go.
We can just call it.
Is the roll call all yes?
Well, as just a point of parliamentary part, or as a point of order, like, is it gonna, don't we need roll call votes for all these payments?
You're supposed to, bylaws.
You know what, let's.
I'm actually asking, I
Let's
really
just do
don't.
roll call vote, just in case, just in case it gets time saving, something happens later. Just called out yesterday.
Mr. Boss?
Yes.
Mr. Chatterton?
Yes.
Mr. Dar?
Yes.
Mr. Ford?
Yes.
I will vote yes. Ms. Halsey?
Yes.
Mr. Birch?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Malagon?
Aye.
Mr. McGee?
Aye.
Mr. Redpath?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Ms. Januskevich?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, it's 13-0-0.
Motion passes. Mr. Chatter?
look, this is a point of privilege, but, we were just raising the concerns for policy manual amendments. I think yesterday when we considered the ECC amendment, we did not do a roll call. I'm wondering if it's possible to have maybe from the video that could be recorded minutes to note that, or is there something that can be done in that regard?
I'd spoken with Mr. Chatterton on that. I think it's my personal opinion, not as parliamentarian, that a point of order would have had to have been raised at the time, but I'm more than willing as secretary to note Mr. Chatterton's observation in the minutes and footnote.
Sorry, the follow-up point of inquiry, Mr. Chair. So that does not invalidate anything that happened as far as that motion is concerned.
I'm really into it.
Okay.
Because we already discussed it. All right, we only have a minute and 52 seconds left.
I'm going to move to extend time by, let's say, 3 hours.
At this rate, is that enough?
It's not going to be enough. We're definitely going to have to move to adjourn to a virtual meeting. If we're averaging an hour per motion.
Let's do 30 hours. Next one's gonna take long. I think we can probably.
Don't, dude, you just. Mr. Thompson.
4 hours.
3 hours.
So there is a motion, is there a second? Second, second by 3 hours?
I'll give you a guess.
There's a second, all right, is there any objection? Of course, there's an objection, so we're gonna go ahead and go to a vote on that. Now the motion to extend time for 3 hours. All in favor, raise your hand.
Is this a serious vote?
Yes.
I mean, until we're done with this.
Get done with this.
If we finish before the 3 hour mark, we're good to go.
Yeah.
Right. And where we all opposed, raise your hand.
Nope, I oppose.
City's motion, well, you know, you voted good.
You can't vote
Your
twice.
motion passed.
All right. Common sense motion number 3. Bloody hell. It is to strike. It is to strike the verbiage that reads, unless those expenditures are later ratified by the LNC under section 1.05, other special approval procedures. The reasoning for this is kind of along the lines of what I was talking about with Mr. Thompson earlier. It doesn't really do us any good for the chair to inform us after the fact that they have they've spent more than they're authorized to spend. I mean, it's cool to know, I guess, but it defeats the entire. We shouldn't be able to ratify something that the chair broke just because he did it on a whim. Oh, thank you.
Time flies on your end.
3 hours went by. I called the question.
Oh, please don't.
I don't call the question.
No, I seconded it already.
Oh, did you? Oh,
Yeah, the chair just didn't hear.
Yeah,
I didn't hear a second.
I seconded.
Turn it down.
Maybe I hop back in line behind the Carlos. Well, I heard the call the question in a second, so no, I didn't. Okay.
Oh.
All right, going on to this one.
I'm sorry. I have to be.
It's not that I necessarily disagree with this, but it does nothing. R1R allows.
We do nothing. That's kind of our thing.
It kind of is.
So then why was it?
Taking this out doesn't do anything. R1R allows decisions to be ratified. I think what Mr. Malagon is attempting to accomplish is to put in the policy manual that these expenditures cannot be later ratified by the LNC. That would have teeth. This does nothing.
May I have a point of parliamentary inquiry, or yes, I guess parliamentary inquiry, just to follow up on the secretary's comment. What would your proposal do then? Like, what teeth would it have to, if we say no, if we cannot ratify or we will not ratify, what does that do then?
It means that we can't unless it's overridden by a 2/3 vote, because of course anything on the policy manual can be suspended by a 2/3 vote. But at least that would have more teeth, because taking that out, it then just defaults to Roberts, and Roberts allows things to be ratified. I mean, I don't mind removing it. I'm just letting you know that it probably isn't doing what you want it to do.
Boss Thompson, Red.
I think the teeth is shall not exceed 5,000. And the unless is an out to exceed 5,000. So I believe I'm with Mr. Malik on that point.
Mr. Thompson.
I agree. Mr. Red.
Right, I just want to make sure that the way I always interpreted this is that there's a slush fund for the chair. And being a former chair, I'd like that when I was chair. But in any event, that expenditures, it reverts to zero if the expenditures are approved by the LNC. Is my reading correct? That basically the chair gets to spend money how he or she likes up to those limits, but those limits revert to zero if those expenditures are later approved by the LNC.
I'm like so confused by that.
Let's say I spend $2,000 or spend $1,000 as the chair,
Right.
but then I put it before the LNC.
You don't have to.
approval. Then I do that, and if it's approved by the LNC, then that 1,000 reverts to zero.
I don't think it
No,
does.
that's not, no, that's not.
No, I think you did an extra step you didn't have to do, but it doesn't revert to zero.
Yeah. It's any rolling 3-month period, and you can't exceed 5,000 for the 2-year term. So what did you do as chair, Mr. Redpath? Because-
I think.
I have a question.
I think we need to look into that.
You had a slush fund.
Okay, Mr. Chatterton's up next. I was gonna, I think, offer my understanding of Mr. Redpath's statement, and I think I generally agree with where you're going with that, is that if those expenses are ratified by the LNC, those would no longer have been discretionary chair expenditures. So they would come out of that bucket. And
I
don't
could be
know if
wrong.
this would be changing that. So I think this amendment would change that paradigm, is my
They can
interpretation.
still be ratified for ROM.
I see that one.
Mr. Malik.
So a question for Ms. Harless, if I may. So I'm sorry, what was the recommendation that you gave that would have teeth?
That would say, that discretionary expending cannot be later ratified by the LNC.
Okay, I will move to amend for that language. And then I'll call the question.
If I understand the proposal, am I correct with also drawing from Ms. Harless's previous comments, that effectively this would add teeth in the manner that in order to ratify, it would require suspension of this policy manual provision, and therefore it would raise that threshold from what would otherwise be a majority to ratify and suspend under the current policy. This amendment would have the impact that it would require this suspension and therefore a 2/3 vote threshold in order to do that. So it could still happen with just a higher burden to achieve that.
Or they did the policy manual, that thing, which was 2/3.
To suspend or to
Yeah.
amend it out of existence.
Yeah.
That is my understanding.
I mean, there's nothing as bulletproof, but I think this does more of what the intent was.
I agree.
Mr. Boston.
Two quick things. I wonder if it was meant to say, because that statement was meant to cap you at 5,000.
Okay,
So
over
when-
the limit.
Okay. And this is commentary, the chair can always come to the board and ask for money.
Yes.
So,
And then it wouldn't be, yeah.
Right, so my point of information would have been, at this point, what this would do then, if the chair breaks this budget rule, it could only be broken, so to speak, if it's, like, if the LNC is okay with the chair having a slush fund, where'd he go? Oh, there he is. Having a slush fund.
Where you go? He's over here. Look at Mr. Redpath.
All the forward. So, right, in other words, we would be sanctioning the chair. So the LNC itself would have to sanction the chair breaking.
It would make it more obvious.
And it would make it more obvious that to the membership that the board is approving the chair pulling a no-no.
Or it could recognize that it was a genuine emergency.
Sure,
Um,
that's all it's gonna be.
and
seen,
what
but-
the ramifications would be,
Yeah,
if I may have the chair's indulgence, say that the chair thought there was a legitimate emergency and they wrote out a $5,000 check. They are taking the risk that the LNC will not override this, and whatever was above the $1,000 would have to come out of their own pocket.
because then the lawsuit would be put in, or someone could do something like that. Okay, I mean, that's fine, so.
I understand what you're saying, or I prefer it as it was originally.
Wait, like the striking?
Yeah. No teeth.
I honestly think people would accomplish the same. I don't see it. I don't get it.
I think it overcomes. Go ahead, Mr. Martin.
I think it's really important that we don't, it would be better if this included language that distinguished between truly discretionary spending versus that spending which may be necessary and incidental to the job. The chair is someone we trust to make executive decisions.
And that was the problem.
Well, I mean, guys, making more cooks in the kitchen doesn't necessarily make the outcome better.
And less cooks made it bad.
I wouldn't say that that's the problem. I'd say, but regardless, I see the need for oversight on this and to protect against wanton spending. I see the danger on this, but ratification, if a chair is following this, is not breaking this, one thing that would be nice is the chair is required to report all of this. Why is it just they can spend what they want? They don't even have to seek ratification. We should be looking at informing and transparency in this process rather than trying to put teeth on every silly regulation, right? This could work really well if the chair was required to report the spending, right? And then if the expenses are ratified as necessary business expenses, it should not be against the chair's ability to make further decisions. The LNC can not only ratify them, but can reset this amount if they deem it necessary. That would be how I would do it for my affiliate. I wouldn't want to bind the chair's hands so I couldn't react to a need that arose. On the other hand, I wouldn't want to give the next chair carte blanche to raid the accounts. Value.
Orders now Chatterton, Thompson, Yanukovych, Hurlis.
So I'd like to speak in favor of the amendment and if adopted of the proposal overall. I think that with this amendment, to maybe clarify what I believe is the case is that the policy manual will override Roberts where they contradict. And if we simply strike this language, there's no commentary about the ratification process, and therefore there is no contradiction between policy manual and Roberts provision for allowing ratification decision after the fact. So if we want there to be a higher burden for that, essentially where we don't tie the hands of the chair if there is a real emergency that requires spending of those thresholds, but it does put on the chair to make sure that really is an emergency and that 2/3 of the board are going to agree with them. Otherwise, the board would be expected to seek those funds reimbursed if that wasn't agreed to be a true emergency justifying those cases. So if we want that to be a higher standard to provide an increased protection against inappropriate spending outside of the oversight, I think this amendment will help achieve that, and it will allow it to be a higher burden on exceeding these rules while still allowing flexibility that's necessary.
Yeah, I feel like I'm being punished for that question.
Remember when you said this would be easy?
I know. But in the interest of time, I will shut up and hopefully that we
I would just like to ask our executive director, how do we track discretionary funding? So we'll have to talk about that. But you know, I understand there's always a tension between not wanting to implement a policy that is really restrictive so that you can't get things done. And, you know, the other end of that is like, no restrictions at all, do whatever. We don't have the luxury to be on this end of it. We right now have to be in a more restrictive posture. There could come a day when we decide we have enough other oversight procedures in place where we can loosen up on that a little bit. But when stuff like this happens, where money's involved, you know, whatever it is, that's what needs to happen. There has to be policies to address these issues. And that's what's happening here. And, you know, if it doesn't work 6 months from now or whatever, then we can revisit it again.
The concern raised about not having tracking of those discretionary fundings, wouldn't that fall under the purview of the regular reviews of bank statements that was just appointed to the FSC?
Well, but I have a political order, we do this, but points of inquiry are not interruptible, you skip line unless they're urgent.
Okay, sorry. You are in the order now. We can get back to that. So now, Ms. Harper.
To speak to Mr. Martin's points, first of all, I could be wrong about this whole thing. You know, it's just an opinion, but I'm trying to honor Mr. Malagon's intent, and I agree with Ms. Janice Gavitt. I know some members of this body disagree, and I understand they disagree and respect. But my personal position is we're in a very, very bad position where we had a naughty chair, and we need to show our fiduciary duty to try to deal with it. I actually don't think Mr. Malagon's amendments, I don't think he made enough of them. And I know that sounds.
But we didn't have time.
I mean, there could have been more than 9 to deal with this situation. And I'm understanding his intent, and all I'm trying to do is accomplish his intent. I could be wrong. I'm gonna vote for this either way, but I just think this honors his intent.
Number 1, does this cover expenses at Club 11?
That would be discretionary.
And number 2, I think right now, I mean, I haven't had to use a discretionary fund, and as Hannah mentioned, there's not really a way to track it. And that might, I think.
We're buying drinks.
Oh, it was? I think we're all done. No, so I think it is a little bit nebulous as to how the chair handles emergencies, because in some cases, and I'm just pointing this out to the board, because I could theoretically work with staff to get something done that's in the budget. So it's a little bit, I mean, I think this is a good idea. I think there should be limits to what the chair can make a discretionary fund for, and I think I'll work with Hannah to figure out a way to put that in the system where you can track it and report it. I think the chair should be able to report discretionary expenditures to the board. I think the FSC will be able to see that, capture that, and be aware of that. So I think that's, I think it's good.
Mr. Chatterton, back to you.
There's not an official.
No. Yeah, go ahead.
There's not an official procedure for how we handle discretionary expenses. I've never received a request to make something a discretionary fund expenditure. However, if I were to have received that request from Angelo or received it, I would have implemented the procedure that exists from an accounting perspective. So it's just not being utilized, but the volunteer place.
Mr. Chatterton, back to you.
Yes, so I wanted to inquire, I think 2 of those items is, I believe that we just adopted the language, FSC shall do a thorough review of all bank statements, financial records, processes, and expenditures of the party on at least a monthly basis, and focus shall be specific to cash disbursements, examining payees, and the evaluation of amounts. That would seem to precisely cover consideration of looking at discretionary spending amongst those to make sure that's classified as discretionary and that the limits applied in this existing policy manual element that we're looking at now. This would seem to be exactly that responsibility that we just appointed to the committee. So I think this supplements and works together with the previously adopted element to accomplish that missing process that has been requested for.
And Indiana State Chair wishes to be recognized for everyone's indulgence.
Everyone may have the chair of the return party to Indiana. So we have something very similar. The state chair, sorry, Steve.
Can you speak up just a little bit?
Yeah, sorry, Steve, but my discretionary spending is also $5,000, but it's per year, not per term. So, but we also have the system in place where if I have an emergency, such as we were authorized to spend $2,000 for getting the state fair booth, but it ended up costing $3,000. Then I have to file the application for it. I pay for it, that's $1,000 out of my discretionary spending. I bring it to the board at the next meeting and say it was $1,000 over, here's what it was. They authorize that expenditure, that comes off of my book. That goes into the general funding. So I now have my full discretionary spending reinstated. It is important, I think, to do that because there are emergency situations that happen, there are test things, there are, hey, we need a security patch immediately today, which has something that has happened to a lot of us. So I would be upset if my board wanted to add that last line because that would hamstring my ability to do my job as the chair. But I do believe that it also is very important to have the oversight to know that the chair has spent those funds. In our case, it's reported in our budget. We have a budget line, which is chair's discretionary spending, and everything is tracked in the budget tracker.
But to be fair, you didn't hire a Filipino call center without telling anybody.
I didn't know it was an option.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move to amend the main motion.
It'd be an amendment of the amendment.
We're still on the amendment.
Correct.
Oh, then I would amend the amendment, if I can, to say that the chair must inform the FSC, right? Is that right? Is that the designation we gave it?
That's already there. It's, we just passed that.
The chair must inform that, and I would say to unstrike unless these expenditures are later ratified by the LNC and insert.
That goes way beyond the scope of the amendment.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, that goes beyond the scope of the amendment.
Then with my comment, I will just say that you could get my vote for this if this was about transparency and not about you putting a collar on the chair.
Are you into that, Mr. Chair?
You don't want to put a collar on the chair.
All right, anyone further wish to be recognized? Not seeing anyone, we're going to a vote on the amendment. Oh, you had your hand raised, sorry.
Okay, I wanted to address the gallery for a moment and also Mr. Martin. We have an executive committee that can meet on a day's notice. If the chair has some kind of an emergency, he needs to get some kind of approval, he can call a meeting of the executive session. We are not dealing with an ideal situation, and Mr. Martin knows, this is with all due respect, and this is not personal to Mr. Michaela. Chairs right now of the Libertarian Party need a collar. We have completely eroded member trust of what happened last year. And even if this collar is only temporary, we've got to look and take everything that happened real seriously. And I know some people don't think it was so bad, okay? I think it was horrible. And I'll go on record as saying, I think it was so horrible from the party of principle that we need to be passing this kind of stuff.
Not seeing anyone else with any questions?
If I may, I appreciate the intent of this, and I appreciate where you're coming from. If I just grant everything that you're saying and everything that the proponents of this are saying, then I still think the problem here is really about whether or not, like in the past, it's not even coming to the attention of the board, apparently, is the problem. Put that in there first, and then why take away our ability to ratify? Agree that we can do it. The executive committee is there. I mean, why take power away from the committee? That just doesn't make sense to me.
You're going to raise your hand? Okay.
I move to extend time to 8 hours. No, I'm going to call the question.
Second?
I'm going to call the question.
Yes.
Thank you.
Calling the question. Any opposition on the question? All right, we're going to the amendments. Be clear, just the amendment, not the main motion.
Does that have to be a roll call or we can show?
For the amendment, we can just do show of hands. It's saying,
We're call, but we're moving, whether or not we're moving it. We're voting on, oh, there was no objection.
there's no objection.
Okay.
Pending debate.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm going. All right.
Get some reps in.
Yes. So all in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. All right. Say 5. All oppose the amendment. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5. All right, let's do that again. I saw. All right, to be clear, this is on the amendment, which is the blue text.
Well, the amendment added, so unless these expenditures are later ratified, will be deleted, and what would be added is discretionary spending over the limit cannot be later ratified. No, my amendment was to keep that deletion in and add that other sentence.
Right.
Yes. So it's the red.
It's a red and blue text, that is what we're going to do.
Fails.
If that
Go
shall
back
become
to
the main motion.
If it fails, the blue goes away and we are back to the red,
Yes.
just the red.
So all those in favor of the blue text
With the red text.
with the red text,
Stricken.
raise your hand.
With the red. With the red text.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. That looks. Oh.
Wait, how many?
Yeah, people raising their hands.
Okay,
So keep your hands raised. If you're voting in favor, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I know. I'm gonna withdraw that.
9, and no, here's 2.
It's too early.
That was 9. All right, those
It's
not in
really
favor.
bad.
raise your hands. That was
None
4.
of us matters.
4 opposition. Any abstentions?
You don't call for it.
I should have abstained.
Okay. Don't call for them.
Abstain means no vote.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
yeah. He's paying attention.
I definitely abstained.
All right, back to the main motion. Any further discussion on the main motion? You called all questions.
I did.
They called just that question.
No, I called all of them. You misheard. You
All
misheard.
9.
All 9 of them, yes.
We are now at the.
A second?
I think it's called.
Yeah, we're going to the main motion.
Main motion, roll call vote.
You've been 3 hours for this one
That
item.
was.
I did. You jinxed it, man.
That was the amendment to the amendment, but he says he called all previous questions.
Right. I was trying to be very specific.
Now, let's be clear on what the main motion is.
The main motion would read, this was added, so that can't be voted down. The main motion would read, the chair without consent of the executive committee is authorized to spend up to $1,000 in discretionary funds within any rolling 3-month period, the total of which cannot exceed $5,000 per term. Discretionary spending over the limit cannot be ratified by the LNC. If this gets voted down, it goes back to that prior language, which would say unless later ratified by the LNC.
Okay. This one needs to be the roll call, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yes. So go ahead and do the roll call.
Is it too late to amend it?
Oh, there was a problem.
I have a problem, hold on a second, 4. Okay,
You just leave that out there.
Mr. Boss,
Pass.
kind of chairing.
Yes, I'm chairing right now.
Mr. Hess. Mr. Ford. Okay, I'm gonna be the first brave person here and you can vote yes. Ms. Hollison.
Yes.
Mr. Hurd.
I'm so enthusiastic.
Mr. Martin.
Pass.
Mr. Malagon.
Aye.
Mr. McGee.
Aye.
Mr. Nicola. Mr. Redpath.
No.
Mr. Thompson. Ms. Yanuskavich.
Yes.
Going back to the passes, Mr. Propose.
Abstain.
Mr. Chatterton.
I think I'm going to sway to no.
Mr. Dar.
I'm still chairing.
Oh,
so-
sorry, dumb. I called me a dummy, not you. Mr. Ford.
I'm going to abstain.
Mr. Martin.
No.
Mr. Thompson. Okay, now I'm back to you, Mr. Dar. It is 6-5. Your vote would make a difference.
My vote would make a difference if I voted against it.
If you voted against it, it would fail. If you voted against it for it, doesn't matter.
And if I abstained,
It doesn't matter.
I'll just abstain.
So it's 6-5.
What is the threshold, two-thirds or majority?
Oh, wait. Am I being dumb? Yeah, I am being dumb.
So I think the motion fails regardless.
Yeah, you are correct.
Wait, it's a motion, it's a majority of the LNC?
It's a
Or
two-thirds.
it's,
Wait,
no, it's
hold
with
on,
previous
hold on.
notice.
Or majority of the entirety.
But wait, is this a standing rule? Yeah, but there's standing rules in the policy manual and special rules of order. Is this a standing rule? Let's look at it.
The very bottom of the financial statements have the chair's discretionary account.
No,
We're
they
not
don't.
talking there. But to advise the board, but I know that discretionary spending.
A special rule of order has to do with parliamentary
When she
proceedings.
went to and she got
You weren't
Instacart stuff. You know that type of thing. So that would be discretion.
However, I understand somebody can.
Is majority of the entire LNC those present?
No, it's the entire body.
Entire body.
So we need
10.
if it's a single board.
You.
But the standing was previous notice, it's just a majority.
Right, and if it's a special rule of order, it requires two-thirds of the
So as a point of parliamentary inquiry, are we trying to debate what, or are we trying to figure out whether it's a standing rule versus a special rule? Because I thought it was a standing rule, but
My understanding is it's a standing.
Then it would pass.
No, I'm trying to.
None of this.
Your turn. It did pass.
That was the chair's ruling.
Actually, that was kind of muted.
Okay.
are we on common sense motion number 4?
I put this the orders of the day.
I move to extend another 3 hours.
Thank you.
For this one item.
I move to extend this meeting for another week.
Mr. Ford needs to say, like I said, that one time, I don't want this meeting to ever end.
So in the interest of time, I do believe everyone should have had a chance to read them. I will remind my colleagues on this board that when I did notice these items, I said, if there are any questions or anything that you would like, only one person, told me that they had a friendly amendment that I accepted. In any case, I'm not going to read the whole thing. I think, unless the chair would like me to, but in the interest of time, this should be a fun one. Most of the language here, I gave the reasoning already on the bottom for anyone that wants to see it in the OneNote. Most of this language and verbiage is from either DC nonprofit corporate law or from directly copied and pasted from the auditor's suggestion, the letter that we all saw that the audit commissioner Bowen did the report yesterday. So this is pretty easy, I think, but that's what I've said about all of them, and that has not been the case. So yeah, that's where we're at. So I would move to adopt this common sense motion number 4.
Second. Oh, I heard that. Did you hear that, Mr. Chair?
And I second.
Did you hear that? I heard Ms. Halsey call the question.
Ms. Halsey called the question.
Second.
And I seconded.
Mr. Buff. So my question is the second paragraph, did anything we passed previously with regard to approve versus review affect the second paragraph?
I'm sorry, one more time.
Did our earlier amendments to change approve to review affect the second paragraph?
No, because this would still be, it's in excess of $3,000, so this would require written approval from the EPCC. And it was specifically as written approval because if it's something that, just like we have the EPCC Teams chat, the FSC would theoretically have a similar chat, just like the Convention Oversight Committee or any committee does. If it's something that easy, it would just be a group chat and it would be signed off by the 3 people that are on the FSC.
Point of order, there's a motion to end debate and call the question.
Before you, let me recognize you before you. What is the nature of your point?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. There is a motion to end debate and call the question.
It wasn't real.
It wasn't real.
It wasn't real.
It wasn't real.
So if that answered Mr. Boss' question,
I could.
I think so.
yeah, so it would still require
Trying
that
to be
written.
consistent across.
And written would mean, it specifically didn't say email, it didn't say, carrier, it could be carrier pigeon, it could be Teams chat, it could be anything in writing that shows that, the chair was given an approval for this contract. I think we have.
So I'd like to understand better the totality of the consideration. So I believe in our previous amendment, we had stated that anything in excess of $600 must be reviewed. And now anything in excess of $3,000 must be explicitly approved. Is that essentially the net impact?
The way I read it, you would have to be contract in excess of any contract in excess of $3,000 without written approval, either the majority of the EPCC or the FSC. So the way I read it, either of those 2 bodies could, if with majority, approve that contract.
It's the difference between an expense and a contract.
And I put, and specifically there, I said whichever committee is appropriate depending on whichever. So this whole amendment, if you, the next common sense motion, number 5, would be to move this whole section from where it is under legal matters and move it to contracts. We have a special section for contracts in the PM because this is kind of all encompassing now. But, pass or fail, it would be to move this whole section to contracts so it's easily identifiable as such because it's not strictly a legal matter anymore. We're talking about several things. And the $3,000 threshold was because, as we now know, plus whoever, no, I say whoever. So the $3,000 is because, we need to rein in our spending first and foremost, but also the Freedom Calls contract that none of us were aware existed was for, agreement. It wasn't really a contract. It was kind of just an agreement. It was in the amount of $4,200 per month. So it's kind of to rein that down and ensure that that doesn't happen again.
All contract payments are expenses, but not all expenses are contract payments.
Right?
Like ducks are birds, but not all birds are ducks. Problem here is we've got some differing standards that are going in that could cause a lot of confusion for how different kinds of expenses are handled. And I actually, if you want to talk about executive abuse by the chair, this theoretically could mean that they have a much higher limitation than what we just approved on other things as we deem expenses, which technically would theoretically be inclusive of our contracts. We'd have to specifically interpret that this is different, for one thing. For another, if the chair says this isn't an expense, they don't have to buy it by 600, they can go to 3,000.
So,
Am I wrong?
But
yes,
there
you,
are definition of contracts in the first paragraph.
right, so the first paragraph covers contracts, agreements, transactions, remunerations, or modifications thereto, which is strictly taken from DC nonprofit law.
I
So-
would argue that the previous motion, the chair's discretionary fund, had more to do with unilateral expenses rather than expenses that go through the committee.
But on this, it says that the requirement is a majority of the EPCC or the FSC, whichever committee is appropriate, if it's in excess of $3,000. But we just passed something in excess, or we're limited at 600, and there's no substantive difference here in the situation, except that we've arbitrarily defined contracts. It's a categorical error. We're just making the categorical error where we're improperly dividing or making an improper distinction between contracts and expenses when contracts are a kind of expense. And so this would be a problem, in my opinion, just for coherency. I do appreciate the intent, and this seems like a great suggestion overall.
All right, there's something here that I do not understand what it means. That's in the paragraph, the all new paragraph beginning, all independent contractors and vendors. Okay, in the fourth line, there's a sentence that begins, all invoices shall be submitted within 2 weeks of the agreed upon terms of payment. I don't know what that means.
Oh, I meant within, so that's a typo, so, yeah, you can take that out, that was just a typo, so the "and" shouldn't be there, so it should be submitted
All
within 2 weeks.
invoices shall be submitted within 2 weeks of the agreed upon terms of payment. All right,
Those will be specific
I think
in the
the
contract.
child will address that.
So, right, so those would be terms that are laid out in the contract, and the reason the invoices have to be, we can't, because we have obviously, the fiscal year, when we close things out, sometimes this happened with the convention last year, where certain contractor, or I'm sorry, there was a contract or an agreement of some kind for a particular speaker to come, and they didn't submit any sort of, we had to close out the year. So we needed them to submit whatever the reimbursement or whatever speaking fee they had prior to that, and they just didn't do it. We can't go back, and I mean, it's just a huge pain in the ass to go back and refile and do that. Then we have to go through an FEC amendment, and it's a whole thing. So if you want to get paid, which most people do for goods and services, they should submit their invoices in a timely fashion. And the 2 weeks threshold was recommended by the executive director. That seemed reasonable, so that we didn't have to go back, and we know how much money we have, don't have on the books in real time.
Yeah, so Mr. Martin's absolutely right. All contracts are expenses, but not all expenses are contracts. So what we did in the prior motion was really talking about ad hoc spending. So if we're looking at that, $600 limit, we're talking to just, kind of your onesie twosie expenses we're having. If we're talking about this motion, what we're talking about is actual contracts. So whether that be contractors who are actually being, employed, using my air quote, by the party, or perhaps we're talking contracts with vendors that the support is working with as part of the convention oversight. Kind of clarify that. So ad hoc versus we were actually doing. And I think Mr. Maligan already spoke to the 2 week thing. So I just wanted to provide clarity on that. So that the intent here is to have more oversight over employment-related contracts as well as vendor-related contracts when we are making big ticket item expenses for things like convention, and that we understand exactly when payment is supposed to be made for the terms of the contract, and we're tracking that in a real-time basis and being proactive rather than reactive. Does that help?
That was very helpful. Thank you for the clarification.
Right, yeah, I mean, a big difference is the first paragraph in terms of, a contract is a legally binding document. It's not like charging $600 to Amazon or whatever. So, and the document has to have these elements to it. It has to have the date, it has to outline the payment of terms. It's got to be countersigned by both parties. There's certain elements that will require that triggers this. And the other issue here is that before it said all contracts or modifications thereto, so there wasn't a definition of a contract. It didn't require anything. So you could say, hey, it's not a contract, but I'm still gonna pay them $15,000, you know? Any of it, no matter what it is, it's a contract, has to be written, has to have these terms. So that's,
Yes, I'll certainly work on these, but bring it again, when we say the agreed upon terms of payment, is that the same as saying the completion of the work?
on the contract.
Right, so those would theoretically be outlined in the contract, which the EPCC or the FSC will have reviewed, or we either have a baseline for it, or, we modify it. So speakers will have specific, for convention oversight, for instance, some speakers will have specific, not just terms of payment, but some of them may want to be reimbursed just for their room, others for travel and their room, some for travel, food, and room. Others will have a speaking fee, some will not. So everyone's a little bit different. And so whatever the terms of those payments are in the contract that's drafted by the EPCC and approved, so it'd be based on those terms. So if they were going to get paid, once they submit an invoice for, whether if it's a reimbursement, for instance, but this wouldn't happen for convention specifically, but let's say that they do something happen. This has happened in the past, actually. It happened in California. So they pay for the room on their own, they get their own flight, all that kind of stuff, and then they request reimbursement. They would submit an invoice that says Southwest Airlines, $900, room 3 nights, 160 rate plus tax and fees and whatever. They would submit documentation showing that that was the case. If they don't want reimbursement for any of that, then it wouldn't matter.
All right. I'm just going to state that maybe petitioners, I can tell you there's some petitioners that don't use it. Okay, I'm just telling you that there are potential complications here for things that we need to get done in the future, that our people have vendors who cannot meet those terms.
Then we shouldn't do business with them. If they can't submit, they either.
I'm just telling you that
Right.
there will be situations that arise where we're going to, we may very well need vendors to meet our goals as a political party, and they're not going to be able to meet these requirements.
That'd be a good problem to have, because that would mean we'd have money.
Right. Well, and to Ms. Keller's point, we can address this in real time. And nothing, I assume that anyone, even if they don't use email or do whatever, they can still submit stuff via mail. We're still, even though we don't have a physical HQ, I assume that the XD will still get mail somewhere. And we can deal with that then. She can scan it, upload it, send it to us, whatever. So it doesn't, people still had contracts in old-timey days before there was email or anything like that.
I appreciate Mr. Redpath's comment, and I know what he's talking about, but we often joke about a certain member that, whose name I won't mention, has objection to electronic mail rather by sundial and carrier pigeon, that we got to start working with people who live in the modern age.
All right, well, if there's no further discussion, then we move on to a roll call vote.
This was the most complicated one that took the least amount of time. That's wild.
Crazy.
We're already going to vote. We're already going to vote. It doesn't matter. I can say it.
Okay.
I can say it.
I'm not such a Jackson. Mr. Boss,
Yes.
Mr. Chatterton, who is chairman? Okay, Mr. Darn,
Yes.
Mr. Dasson,
Yes.
Mr. Ford.
Yes.
I will vote yes. Ms. Housing,
Yes.
Mr. Hirsch,
Yes.
Mr. Martin,
Pass.
Mr. Maligan,
Aye.
Mr. McGee,
Aye.
Mr. Redpath,
Abstain.
Mr. Thompson,
Yes.
Ms. Januskavich,
Yes.
Mr. Ford,
Yes.
Mr. Martin.
Yes.
The eleven passes. The vote is 12-02.
Motion passes. Now the common sense motion number 5.
No, this was super common sense motion, number 5, Mr. Chair. So this is to move that section. So to move subsection 3, contracts and contract approval, currently under section 1.06 legal matters, to subsection 4 under section 1.08 financial matters, and renumber the subsequent subsections in both sections. That was fun to say.
Second.
Second, would you like to speak to your motion?
I just did.
All right, is there any discussion on this motion?
Apparently.
I moved to call the question. This is,
I don't hear you.
I object to calling the question.
I object to calling the question. I'm just kidding.
There's a motion, a second to call the question. All in favor of calling the question, raise your hand. All opposed? All right, we'll go to a roll call vote.
But we still have to do it, right?
We still have to do roll call.
It's a good thing you're funny, man. What a good sense of humor.
Yes.
that's okay. I'm gonna give you guys some minutes from comparison if you can find Easter eggs for Mr. Bob.
Yes.
Mr. Chatterton.
Yes.
Mr. Darrow.
Yes.
Mr. Dustin.
Yes.
Mr. Ford.
Yes.
I will vote yes. Ms. Halsey.
Yes.
Mr. Hurst.
Yes.
Mr. Martin.
Yes.
Mr. Malagon.
No.
Were you serious?
Yeah, let's do it. Come on.
You're not allowed to vote against your own motion.
Am I really not? That's not true.
I think that is true.
Okay, fine. Not to laugh, it's fine. Aye.
Mr. McGee.
Aye.
Mr. Redpath.
Sure, why not?
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Ms. Janis Gavin.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, it's 13-0.
Motion passed.
Unity.
Motion passed. Mr. Ford, I think you had your hand up. Yeah, we can request, 15 minute break. All right, we'll recess for 15 minutes.
Sounds great. Yeah, finally, good call. We were finally on a roll.
I know. I'm not, I've written whole.